All right, my friends, let's get started. Because sometimes you don't want to be proven right. For many years now, I've been covering China's infiltration into the United States and how many of those efforts have been successful. One storyline was accompanied by the name of Huawei. Putting it simply, cell phone transmitters that could potentially report back to China activities happening here domestically. Well, then recently a new story emerged by a group called Fufeng Group that purchased a farmland tract in North Dakota right next to one of our critical military bases, and that was picked up with great acceptance, and I'm going to show you so you understand the background and expertise we have on this category. But now we're in danger. That's why I titled this ICBM Red Alert China Fufeng Group who purchased that farmland. Well, that entire storyline now goes nuclear. And why do I state that? Because the FBI has been uncovering and now uncovers that Huawei cell phone towers are by far a greater danger than they have ever discussed before. And they are surrounding our ICBM bases. You got to hear this story. I'll give you all the details and the background of why this is so critical to the very security of the United States of America. Now, before I go any further, I want to welcome all our new audience members. Coming off of Lisa Haven's broadcast yesterday, I'll leave a link above. So many new folks have joined, and welcome home. There's so much information we provide you on these two platforms. If you haven't subscribed to my platform here, please do help me share the video. Your comments always appreciated, but your means of supporting me is also at restrictedrepublic.com. To the story.
Hidden beneath this vast, snowy prairie land in central Montana are more than 100 nuclear-armed intercontinental ballistic missiles, ready for launch. It's desolate terrain, but vital to American national security, which experts worry could face a threat from China.
This desolate land, as they call it, containing some of America's most critical ICBM sites. Well, now there's a different story that's unfolded. The FBI now declaring that Huawei transmitters, well, they're not as secure as we maybe realized. Even though I've been reporting on it for years, you see how close the proximity between the triangle transmitter or cell tower and one of our missile silos is, but it's far worse than that. Because there's all the cell phone towers, the dots you see on your screen, and the ICBM fields. It appears they're surrounded. So could be. Suddenly takes on a whole new form. I've covered this for years. The company, Huawei, why did they use it? The equipment's less expensive. They can't afford the more expensive equipment, and our government hasn't chosen to help them on that either, which would be of major concern. But how does this all come into focus? A news story many of you may have heard of. I hope if you listen to my broadcast you have. I did a one on Lisa Haven's channel that took off, and it received much larger attention. We're going to get there. It's about Fufeng Group selects Grand Forks as U.S. manufacturing site. Well, that raised concern because it's right next to the Grand Forks Air Force Base. I did a ton of digging into this story because housed in the Grand Forks Air Force Base is the 319th Air Reconnaissance Wing, our most sophisticated drones, and they just happened to win an award recently for their ability, and within the promotional video, if you want to call it, of the competition they won, to provide frontline support in the event of an invasion of Taiwan by China. So now that should give you grave cause for concern. Why would that be happening? Why would they want to get so close to our military base, especially knowing what that technology could provide for? Well, this video took off on Lisa Haven's channel, July 4th, Red Alert, China making monumental wartime maneuver on U.S. soil. Well, they're making many monumental maneuvers. Well, this caught the attention of many outside of our home broadcasting network, if you want to call it that. Lori Hans, I want to thank you. Her No Apology show, where I was able to appear, they've done an amazing job covering this from start to finish because it affects them. It's in their home state. They're watching all the inner workings, and I'm going to explain some of those inner workings that will leave you scratching your head wondering why. Because the FBI has known about this. The FBI, CIA, NSA say American citizens shouldn't use Huawei phones. But they continue to allow us to use Huawei transmitters. Those transmitters, well, CNN's finally decided to catch up with the storyline.
A telecom giant that has been called a national security risk by U.S. intelligence officials.
We're deeply concerned about the risks of allowing any company or entity that is beholden to foreign governments that don't share our values to gain positions of power inside our telecommunications networks.
Well, that would be an understatement. Positions of power or positions of control and interference or reconnaissance. Either way, none of these are good scenarios. The FBI even dedicates an entire page to it, the China threat. The Chinese government is employing tactics that seek to influence lawmakers and public opinion to achieve policies that are more favorable to China, but yet we still allow them to buy U.S. farmland. How does that make sense? It doesn't to any individual with common sense, but in a government lost of any semblance of common sense, I guess it does make sense to them. China wants a bolder presence in Washington, so it's building a $100 million garden. You remember this story from 2017? Do you remember why this project was very quietly shut down? Because the Chinese wanted to send in materials via an attaché that nobody could inspect. So the U.S. government, the feds, officially killed the project. There's been concern over the Chinese influence for some time, and this is no surprise to the FBI, but yet we still allow them so close to our critical military bases and now our ICBM fields. China building massive power farm near U.S. Air Force Base in Texas. Chinese company, again, to that purchase of North Dakota farmland raises national security concerns in Washington because they're attempting massive land buys time and time again, and it's being allowed. But remember that FBI alert and why this now becomes ultra critical. Some will say it's disinterest, or a competing interest, or a dangerous interest in U.S. agriculture, which may very well be a part of the point also, but my radar's been up on something else and has to do with radar itself, of course. Many letters coming out from, well, a few members of our government declaring this is of severe concern, but yet nothing has been done to stop it yet. Not of enough force. Those folks in North Dakota are fighting hard to assure this doesn't happen, but I'll show you what happens when you do dissent and the FBI shows up at your door. I'll give you a perfect example of that. But keep in focus. There's an ICBM fields, and look how they're surrounded by cell towers containing Huawei equipment, which the FBI has now come out. Even CNN has to cover it now. FBI investigation determined Chinese-made Huawei equipment could disrupt U.S. nuclear arsenal communications. Is there a bigger story? I wouldn't think so. I would think if I was in the seat of government, I would deal with that immediately. Since at least 2017, federal officials have investigated Chinese land purchases near critical infrastructure, shut down a high-profile regional consult believed by the U.S. government to be a hotbed for Chinese spies, and stonewalled what they saw as clear efforts to plant listening devices near sensitive military and government facilities. Among the most alarming things the FBI uncovered was a bombshell pertaining to Chinese-made Huawei equipment atop cell towers near U.S. military bases in rural Midwest. According to multiple sources familiar with the matter, the FBI determined the equipment was capable of capturing and disrupting highly restricted Defense Department communications, including those used by U.S. Strategic Command, which oversees the country's nuclear weapons. How long have we reported on this? How many years? Why we fight against these land purchases when you put something this close to a missile silo? It gives you too much power. A power that can care less about America. The only thing they care about is destroying us. The company operating the towers among the Montana missile fields now is called Triangle Communications. Their FCC filing makes clear that part of their tower's radio network is manufactured by Huawei. So just want to give you all your confirmation this equipment really does exist. At least 5 cell phone towers operated by Triangle in Montana are less than 3 miles from ICBM silos as well. In at least one case, a launch control center. Makes you feel nice, warm, and fuzzy, doesn't it? Trump had fought back against this. Trump signs orders effectively banning Huawei telecom equipment in the U.S. Part of Lisa's broadcast yesterday, one of the comments I saw, because I had said Trump didn't do enough. He did a lot. I'm not going to deny that. But unfortunately, a lot of what he did was unraveled too quickly. There wasn't enough change. There wasn't a long enough period of change. And the story last yesterday, if you missed it, you have to watch it, because what he's now saying he's going to do is by far greater. It appears he may have learned a few lessons. But he wasn't the only one, by the way. Obama did also. Just want to, again, put everything in perspective here. There's the Air Force Base. And there's more coverage by weather balloons now. Could really raise some alarms. Former officials described the probe findings as a watershed moment. The investigation was so secret that some policymakers in White House and elsewhere in government weren't briefed on its existence until 2019. Why the big secret? According to two sources familiar with the matter. That fall, the Federal Communication Commission initiated a rule that effectively banned small telecoms from using Huawei and a few other brand of Chinese-made equipment. The existence of the investigation at the highest levels turned some doves into hawks. In 2020, Congress approved $1.9 billion to remove Chinese-made Huawei and ZTE cellular technology across wide swaths of rural America. But why didn't they finish the job? Would be the bigger question. I talked about those weather cameras and how close they are also to our sensitive defense. It's a sick story when you read it. How could anybody allow for this? What's the excuse? Why didn't it go through? Why didn't it change? Why is Huawei allowed anywhere in our network whatsoever? The FCC has since said that the cost could be more than double the $1.9 billion appropriated in 2020, and absent any additional appropriations from Congress, the agency is only planning to reimburse companies for a fraction of their loss. And the companies are saying we can't afford to replace the equipment because the subsequent equipment is far too expensive. And the U.S. government, we can only help you to a certain degree. But yet, we have no problem sending $1 billion, $270 million, $1.7 billion, $40 billion to Ukraine, but can't secure our own defense infrastructure against America's number one enemy. You see how none of this makes sense? And yet we continue to allow it to develop into stories we should not be reading. I love this quote here. Can't believe I say I love a quote from CNN, but they're not the ones who said it. Sometimes I feel like we're a lifeguard going out to a drowning person and they don't want our help. I think sometimes we, the FBI, say China threat and we take for granted what all that means in our head. And it means something else to people that we're delivering it to. I think we just need to be more careful about how we speak about it and educate folks on why we're doing what we're doing. No, you need to do something. Oh, that's right. You did, didn't you? Because if you dare speak out about this, if you dare speak out about that connection to China in Grand Forks, and you're dear enough, concerned enough as a concerned citizen on Fufeng and the project in Grand Forks, you create a Facebook page, and Jody Carlson's the name in question here, goes ahead and makes a post on that very topic. We have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. When a long train of abuses, pursuing invariably the same object, a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is our right, our duty, to throw off such government to provide new guards for our future security. The word there, the people, replaces ours, what she stated. And what reaction did she get? Police and FBI visit home of Fufeng opponent, let me get that out of the way, over social media activity. We weren't sure how to take it. Well, let me give you a suggestion on how to take it. Maybe do something for the American people and secure us against foreign interest in our domestic lands. It's fairly simple, guys. Ladies, who's ever serving within these panels, to choose inaction because it's too expensive or it doesn't serve the right interest. Our defense infrastructure is everything. Well, there's two things more important, food and water, and then an ability to defend yourself. So who can possibly sit across the table from me, and I'm inviting you because I'd love to interview you and ask you the question to your face. How can you explain to my viewership, the American people and me, how any of this should not be priority number one, and any Chinese interests within our domestic United States should be shut down, dismantled, and thrown in the garbage immediately so we can control our own destiny? The invite's open. Just send an email anywhere you want, restrictedrepublic@gmail.com. Make it nice and easy for you. Restricted Republic. I know Republic may be a tough word for a lot of you. I know, I get that. But nonetheless, please go ahead and use it so we can have a one-on-one chat. And if you have a position, you can explain it to the American people, because I'd really like to hear a straight story. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justus Knight, signing out.